Good morning and welcome to Either Faces episode 18. It's another guest episode, one of our favourites, I'm sure you'll agree. This is Sir Buckley coming to you from still sunny, still warm England. Yes, the rumours are true, we are in summer finally. Like I say, today is a guest episode, which is always fantastic to get these people on and talk about everything about them, basically. And today, certainly no exception. Really fun episode, really fun recording. Very much looking forward to getting to that in a moment. Before we get there, just a hello and thank you. How are you? Are you well? Glad to hear it. As always, we want to thank everyone for the listens and the comments and the shares and retweets and whatever else you're doing. Carrier pigeon, just shouting it from rooftops. We appreciate it all, everything we get here at the Other Faces, and hopefully you continue to enjoy what I and sometimes Lady Buckley are putting out, which is quite lazy really. Mainly it's me. If anyone not in the loop hasn't been here for a while, we've still got our weekly, or normally weekly, Valar Rereadus projects, the Scraps and Scrolls, we call them, episodes, done in conjunction with History of Westeros' reread project. They're really fun, a lot of work, true, 7 chapters a week, but really fun and proving very popular, so we're going to keep going with those, as long as there's some extra notes to get through. Hope you enjoy them. On slightly bigger scale, bigger news, Patreon, whatever you call it, we're on it. So if you want to be a part of that, hey, go for it. We certainly won't tell you no. You can come and join us now. We've got 5 of these tier thingies. And to be fair, originally quite a hard choice. We didn't really know whether we were going to go ahead of it. I had my reservations, whether it fit in line with what this kind of podcast is all about. But put a poll out on Twitter. People seem to be in favour of it. Had some lovely messages from fans of the podcast and even some former guests kind of persuading me that this was the way to go, and you know, to serve the fandom better, then the podcast needs to improve, and this is one of the ways we can do that. So hopefully that will all work out, and we can put out a better show. You know, we can get her own mic for Lady Buckley, and we can really learn how to use software properly, because you know, I'm just kind of groping around in the darkness, as I'm sure you can tell. But hopefully the important thing is we keep improving. So before we get to today's lovely guest, let's just have a look at our Patreon and what's on offer, just in case you're not aware. I did mention this last week on Valar Rereadus Part 5, I think it was, episode 17. But this time I'm actually going to give you some details on what you can get depending on what tier you are. So like I said last time, our tiers, they're all based on trees. Not the red and white of weirwood trees, because that would be a bit creepy, but normal green trees that we all like. So our first tier is our grassy roots people. And let me say already a hello and thank you, honestly, from the bottom of our heart, from those people who signed up to the grassy roots level. It's really very much appreciated. And yeah, we just hope that we can do right by you and make you feel like it's a worthy investment. Definitely let us know if we're not, because we'll do everything to get to that point. But anyway, yes, our tiers. So grassy roots people, they get a general non-personalised shout out on every episode, all the shows like we just had, but also up on my website, thegrindstone.co.uk, we're going to have a wall. I'm going to put that up later, kind of a wall of thanks, so you actually get your name there and, you know, a little message as well. And also they get 1 day early access to Valar Rereadus episodes, so lucky you. Moving on is our Lime Leaves, which I particularly like. Lime Leaves tier, which is $5 or more per month. And I should mention, every time we go up a tier, you get whatever that tier before you got. So, for instance, our Lime Leaves get all the benefits that a grassy root would, of course. But specifically, Lime Leaves, they're the first tier where you get access to Patreon-only episodes. We're going to have a few of those. The first one coming up is Lady Buckley's long-awaited return, where we are going to look at and analyse the big weddings of A Song of Ice and Fire in honour of our own wedding anniversary, which was last Sunday. So that's a nice tie-in, isn't it? Always thinking, I am, see? But we're also going to have some extra guests come on for kind of special feature episodes for certain subjects, some return guests. I say no names for now, but hint, hint, hint. I'm sure you'll be interested in those. So that'll be coming soon, and that is only accessible to Patreon people of Lime Leaves and above. So looking forward to that. Also, they get access to guest episodes like this one 2 to 3 days early. In this case, it's free. You're going to get it today. Today is Monday. Everyone else is coming out for Thursday. So There you go. Moving on is our jade branches. Jade is a kind of green. I double checked. It's not, I thought it was kind of blue. But no, I am right. It's kind of green. Jade branches. They get access to those Patreon-only episodes, obviously, but 2 or 3 days early, so a bit earlier than the Lime Leaf people. And also, personalised shout-outs on every other Valar Readus episode, because they're weekly, every guest episode, and all Patreon-only episodes. So, for instance, let me say hello and thank you to our first Jade Brants, Sir Jancy. I think it's Sir Jancy. It might be Sir Yancey. Could be. But honestly, thank you so much. We're really appreciative of you breaking the mould and being our first Jade Branch. Queen of the Jade Branches from now on. Very, very thankful. And again, like we said, Sir Yancey gets all the benefits that a lime leaf or a grassy root would as well. Our green trunks. Not swimming shorts, I mean like the trunk of a tree. $12 or more per month. They get personalised shout-outs on every single episode. Also, you can give the option to submit a question to me for the Valar Readus and Patreon-only episodes, which can be about the podcast, they can be about the fandom, they can be about A Song of Ice and Fire itself, anything fairly nerdy. I like most things. Don't ask me about Merlin, because it'll take the whole episode up and I won't get on to anything else. And you may not want to do that, that's absolutely fine, but the option is there. Also, at this level, you get to be involved in, the community polls and choosing what subjects we take for Patreon-only episodes, etc., etc. That'll all come. We're kind of finding our feet a little bit with the Patreon website and how you do everything. We're going to put our goals up later this week and stuff like that. But we'll get there. It's always a slow process. Finally, my favourite one, Emerald Trees. And Emerald, just makes me think of Chaos Emeralds from Sonic, but still. Emerald Trees, $18 or more per month. And that will get you early access to all kinds of episodes. 4 days early for Patreon only, 3 days early for guest episodes. Personalised thanks on every episode. And we thought, because this is a fandom-based podcast and we want to give shout-outs and promote people as much as possible, for these Emerald Trees, if you have a blog or a website or a podcast, even if it's not about A Song of Ice and Fire, but especially if it is, then we will give a shout out during the episode. And maybe you don't have one, but you have a friend or does, or you're just a particular fan of another blog or podcast. We try to give shout outs as much as possible anyway, but we definitely will in this case. And also there will be access to quarterly Google Hangouts with myself, Lady Buckley, and other patrons of this level, if you so choose. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't like me that much, but you just don't know what to do with your money. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. And, of course, all of the above. So that's our tiers, ladies and gents. If you feel so inclined, then please kind of have a look. Maybe you fancy it, maybe you don't. And if not, not a problem. We love you all the same. We really appreciate your support either way. We're really still got our socks knocked off every time we look at the download numbers. Really fun. Anyway, enough of that. We know what you're here for, really. Today's guest is obviously the brilliant Shakesofthrones, or Lauren. And I will not deny you the pleasure of listening to her talk about Shakespeare and Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire any longer, okay? So without further ado, let us head down to the lakeshore and meet today's guest. Ladies and gentlemen, green men of all ages, it's my pleasure to say hello to Lauren, sometimes better known as Shakesofthrones. Hello, and how are you today, Lauren?
Hello, I'm great, Joe. It's great to be here at the Isle of Faces. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I'm fine. Thank you for asking me. A bit hay fevery, but I'm sure I'll survive. Thank you for travelling over to the Isle of Faces today. I know you're a very busy person, and we're recording this early in the morning, your time. So thank you again, because normally I'm up in the middle of the night recording these, so you're already a plus in my book. It's great you've agreed to come on. It's really cool to have prospective, active member of our community stopping by the Isle to speak with us again. Do you want to tell us where you're talking to us from today?
Yes, I am talking to you from the usually rainy Pacific Northwest in Washington State, Western Washington, but we've actually been having a spell of pretty good weather here. It's the summer, so we usually have beautiful summers.
You can join us then. We're used to rain as well.
Oh, yeah. I've lived in England before, so it did feel like home to me. I've lived a lot of places, but the Pacific Northwest is where I'm from, so I just moved back here from Chicago a couple months ago, so it's good to be back.
Yeah, I bet. And I know you've just recently got a new job, so congratulations on that as well.
Yeah, we were originally going to do this podcast like a couple weeks ago, and we both
That's
had
right.
conflicts, and mine ended up being an interview for a job, and I got the job. Yay.
Oh, definitely worth the delay then. Have you started yet, or is that still to come?
No, it's still to come. I start in August. I'll be a music therapist in an adolescent behavioral unit at a hospital.
Oh, super. Oh, that's great. Well done. Congratulations. I wish you all the best of that. So, like I said in my intro, we've got a whole bunch of questions tweeted and messaged in. People were very excited to hear you were coming on the aisle, because obviously you're very popular on Twitter. So, and I've got my own questions as well. I'm sure you've got a lot to tell us. So I guess we'd best begin, really. And I'm sure it'll sound much more eloquent coming from yourself. Would you like to give us just a quick synopsis of who you are and what it is you do within the fandom?
Yeah, sure.
It's obvious from your Twitter handle anyway.
Yes, yeah, I'm a Twitter person. So for the past 3 years, I've been on Twitter as Shakesofthrones, and I basically talk about Shakespeare and A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones. I tweet gifts matched with Game of Thrones, or Game of Thrones gifts matched with Shakespeare tweets every Sunday in a popular hashtag called Shakespeare Sunday. And I also rewrite scenes from Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire in Shakespearean verse. And in the past year, I've gotten into writing analysis essays as well, like so many in the fandom who have come before me, which I found is really hard, but also really rewarding.
Yeah, that's great. You've only been doing it for... I've read your stuff, so the fact you've only been doing it for a year makes me feel bad, because I've been doing it for ages and they're not to par. So well done you. You've got involved very quickly.
Oh, thank you very much.
And before we go forward, please do tell us where we can all find you on the internet, because I do encourage people to pause right now and go and check out all of your previous work, although I'm sure they have already.
Right. Like I said, you can find me at Shakesofthrones on Twitter. Shakespeare-thrones.com is where I post my lengthy essays that are harder to put on Twitter. And you can also find me on YouTube at Shakespeare of Thrones, where I read my essays if you want to listen to it cool. in an audio version. And I also have a video of myself eating a habanero pepper and reciting Sonnet 18. So if you want to check that out, that's there too.
Start with that. That's top priority. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So we usually start off these episodes by asking about the books or reading or how you came to A Song of Ice and Fire, which we will get to. But I thought this time we'd do it a little different and try our hands at some icebreaking games. How does that sound to you?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. Well, we'll see how it goes. It's a first, and I've not done one of these recordings for about 6 months now, actually, so I apologise if I'm rusty. Yeah. Okay, so our first game then is yay or nay. So you can tell already, slightly Shakespearean form of yes or no. And I'll say, I'll apologise to you and dear William if I'm going over the top a bit, trying to make this Shakespearean. Our listeners can't see, but I have got my great big white collar on and I've discovered the potato. But anyway, yay or nay. So, Lauren, I've got 3 statements I'm going to read out, and all you've got to do is tell us whether you yay or nay to that sentence, and you can maybe tell us why as well. How's that?
All right, sounds good.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's not the most complicated games, hopefully.
Yay.
So, number 1, yay or nay. The west coast of the USA is very similar to the west coast of Westeros.
Yay, actually.
Yay?
Yay,
super.
because...
Right. Sound effect, ding, ding, ding.
Yay! I would say that, the Lannisters down south and Lannisport and Casterly Rock and all that, it's kind of like LA, it's a little bit...
Yeah.
It can be sunny down there and people are blonde and it's like a populous area, but then you get further up north and there's the Iron Islands, which is kind of like the Pacific Northwest. Everybody's kind of grungy and unwashed and... a little bit bitter and cynical about life. I don't know. I wouldn't put that as a blanket statement for everybody in the Northwest. But we have that reputation sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Good comparison. Okay, number 2 then. In a tourney, you would enter the melee before the jousting or the archery. Yay or nay?
Ooh, nay.
Nay, okay.
I'm more of a precision person. And I don't like crowds.
So you'd be archery, would you?
Yeah,
or jousting.
It would be jousting or archery because I don't do well with crowds, and I think like the melee is always the one where you're just kind of it's basically like a mosh pit of fighting, isn't it?
It would be a bit horrible, yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to pick archery or jousting?
Ooh, let's see. I've done archery in real life. I have not done jousting in real life, although I did it on Second Life once.
Well, there you go. So you experienced them both.
But I would say archery, I think. It seems like something that I would want to get. It seems like the more intellectual thing, and the thing that requires less equipment, Doesn't require a horse.
Yeah. You could do it on a horse as well. You could be really good and do both at once.
That's Dothraki style.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, last one then, number 3. A much harder question to answer, but yay or nay, A Storm of Swords is the most tragic of the A Song of Ice and Fire books, and this in turn makes it the most relatable to the works of Shakespeare. So have at that.
Yeah, I would say yay and nay. It's one of those annoying yes and no questions.
2 sound effects this time, ding ding ding.
Yay! I agree. It's the most tragic of the books in a way, because there are so many huge tragic events in A Storm of Swords, which are similar to events and motifs in Shakespearean tragedies. Like, there are these disrupted feasts that happen a lot in Shakespeare, and mass murder, and the duel between Oberyn and the Mountain has always been a little bit reminiscent to me of the duel between Mercutio and Tybalt from Romeo and Juliet. Perhaps because Oberyn and Mercutio remind me so much of each other. They're so charismatic and charming and loving of life, but also extremely overconfident. And that leads to their doom. And then you also have Tyrion killing his father, and we see that theme of kinslaying in Shakespeare as well. But I don't know. Game of Thrones is also hugely Shakespearean to me, especially with Ned's POVs. I think if you look at his arc specifically, it's the most Shakespearean from beginning to end, not just because his end is all wrapped up and we know where it leads, but because he is kind of framed as this tragic hero, this protagonist who we're rooting for, and ends up having these tragic flaws which get the best of him. And yeah, I've written an essay about that if you want to check it out at my website, Shakespeare-themed.com, which outlines similarities between him and Brutus and Julius Caesar, but he's framed more as like the anti-Brutus, but still in a very tragic hero fashion. Anyway, I can ramble on and on about that. But
we could listen to you all day very easily. I could sit here.
But then I would say that dance has like this psychological and emotional undercurrent that is also very similar that we see in a lot of Shakespeare's plays, especially in Hamlet, which is definitely has like that psychological depth to it that we associate so much with Shakespeare and modern literature. And it's really great to get inside of characters' heads so much and their hearts and conflicts with themselves, which is what George loves to write so much about. So yeah, I'm just really excited to see what the next book brings us as far as that, because it seems like each book has only gotten better. I'm not sure if you agree.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That's awesome. We can see why you've gained so many fans. Like I say, we're quite happy to just sit. I won't talk for the rest of the time. We'll just listen to you.
I'm just rambling.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. And there you go. The icebreaker game works, obviously, because we can see your passion and knowledge of Shakespeare coming straight away there. Okay, second game. Shorter game this time. It's called Teacher, Preacher and Sword, and it's scenario time. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and you got to answer me. So, scenario is you've sailed away. We'll put you in the Westerlands, where you kind of are in real life. And say you've sailed west into the Sunset Sea. You've discovered a brand new land, but your ship's a small one. You've only got room for 3 and yourself. And you have room for a teacher, a preacher, by which I mean a politics or like a PR dude, and a swordsman, a warrior. So which 3 people from all of A Song of Ice and Fire would you take with you to fulfill those roles and keep you company in your boat?
Oh, gosh.
It's a toughie.
This is really tough, because because I'm not just like trying to think of who would best fulfill these roles, but I need to assemble a team that would be cohesive and get along.
Yeah, that's the much harder part. Find 3 people that won't throw each other out the boat.
That's really hard to do in Westeros. Okay. I think for my teacher, oh no, I'm gonna start with my preacher person. Which when I hear politics or PR guy, immediately I think Tyrion. And bless Tyrion, I guess I love him, but I don't really want to be on an island on a boat with him.
No, he doesn't do well on boats so far. No.
So I'm actually going to choose Catelyn because she's great at politics, and I think that she can do the PR thing really well, and I think we get along really well because she's my favorite POV. So
there we go.
Yeah, and for my sword, Brienne, obviously, she is my right-hand woman. She is my sword. And
they do get on, so there you go.
Yeah, and she's like my favorite character. So there we go. And she and Catelyn get along great. Well, pre-Lady Stoneheart days, anyway.
Yeah, they did.
We're talking Catelyn, not Lady Stoneheart, just making that clear.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be on a boat with her.
No. And teacher, let's go with Maester Luwin. Because he knows about astronomy and all kinds of useful, rational things. He could sail by the stars, I bet, if he had to.
Yeah, he probably could. I love a bit. They're all great picks. I like all of them, especially giving Catelyn some politics acknowledgement. That's what I mean. Politics acknowledgement.
Yeah, she's great at politics. No, she doesn't.
Okay, great. There you go. The two games then to break the ice a bit. We're rolling now, so I'll get into the meat of it and start. We can start getting to know you a bit better. So on your website that you mentioned, which is beautiful, by the way, once we stop recording, you're going to have to give me some design tips.
Oh, thank you. It's just a word. Yeah, I spent a lot of time looking around for the different prepackaged things that I could do on WordPress, and I found one eventually, but I could definitely help you if you need it.
Oh, I definitely need it. Only one quick glance at my website will tell you I do. Your logo especially... John/Will is brilliant. But on your website, it has a very handy about me section, or about you rather, which I'm not just going to read out because it's going to sound much better as we find out about you as we go. But it does give us some handy hints about what to ask. And on it, you mentioned that you had a drama teacher that was really important to you in your youth and opened up your eyes to a lot of stuff, hence the last question and where you picked Maester Luwin. So perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit about that teacher and what she or he gave you and how those experiences affected you later on.
Yeah, there were actually a couple teachers. They're a married couple who set up this local Shakespeare festival cool. that I participated in as a kid during the summer because I was like 10 years old and basically just sitting on my butt all summer and watching TV. And my mom was like, that's not going to do. And she enrolled me in this youth theater program at the Shakespeare Festival. And yeah, I was this married couple with a big family who ran the whole thing. And they were both experienced actors and directors, and the one especially, I think the man, he wasn't as experienced working with kids, and he could be a little bit harsh sometimes, and I think made me cry a few times. But the wife, she was a lot more gentle with children, and I think she eventually took over the entire youth program.
Oh, okay.
But it's good, it's good to get a little bit of tough love. But yeah, I was in Hamlet when I was 10, and that's a really intimidating and very dark play to be in when you're 10. But I don't know, they just made it really fun. And we would start with improv games related to lines that we were saying in the play, and we would talk about what everything meant. And it wasn't the whole play. We would... It was pared down a little bit, but the lines weren't changed at all.
That's great.
And I remember I really didn't like it at first. I thought it was too hard, and I couldn't memorize the lines, and my grandma had to help me memorize them. But then when opening night came and we performed, I just loved it and fell in love with it and kept on coming back. And it just felt like this world to escape into, kind of like a little fantasy world where everybody talks funny. And
I'm sure.
But Shakespeare's very clever, though. I fell in love with a lot of the cleverness of Shakespeare first, I think. I remember Much Ado About Nothing was also another one of the plays that we did, and it's just so funny, and Beatrice and Benedict have that classic hate to love relationship, enemies to lovers kind of a thing, which is just a trope nowadays. And so many of the motifs and structural elements from his plays have become like standards in literature and storytelling.
Baseline.
And yeah, I mean, even in the comedies, somebody assuming a disguise and getting up to all kinds of mischief, and there's this dramatic irony where the audience knows and nobody else in the play knows, and we're trying not to find out that this person is absolutely somebody else. And we certainly see that in A Song of Ice and Fire with Arya multiple times as she assumes new identities. So I'm starting to ramble more, but I don't know, it was just kind of like this thing in the summer and sometimes in the fall that I would do where the best word I can use is it just felt like an escape to another land and another world. And it is in a way, but it also...
Yeah, of course.
But as I got older, I realized how important Shakespeare is to modern literature and our world, like how fundamentally changed our modern English language is as a result of Shakespeare. It's astounding.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. It's a great story to hear. You mentioned it being an escape. I'm sure a lot of us book readers and literature fans, we can all relate to finding something similar, especially in childhood. But I love hearing stories of teachers or schools or whatever it might be of kind of introducing kids to that. I've been a teacher. My wife's been a teacher. It's very hard to get kids passionate in something like that or anything really. So to hear success stories, that's always really great to hear.
And what was cool, I remember something else I wanted to say. What was cool is that in the years following, like as you got a little bit older, you would graduate onto this program where you were a stagehand for the adult plays, because they did, plays which were, the full script, and they had, actual paid actors in them. And that it made me feel like really like I was moving up in the world and
that's really
learning
cool
even more, because then you would take master classes from the professional actors. And it was just really cool.
Yeah, that sounds an amazing setup. I wish we had more stuff like that here. That sounds brilliant. So this is in your kind of preteen years. So I want to ask you about your high school experience with Shakespeare. Obviously, I have a limited knowledge of how the US school system works, but I assume that Shakespeare is fairly present. Obviously, being in England, it was a big thing here. Everyone had to go to the Globe Theatre when you're 12, and I think we read Midsummer Night's Dream, and then for exams we did Macbeth and Hamlet. And I remember that always makes me laugh, because for some reason when we got to 16 they split us boys and girls again, and the boys did Hamlet and the girls did Romeo and Juliet.
That makes no sense.
I don't know. I didn't know it then. I still don't know now.
Did the girls have
I'd
a
love
choice?
to ask.
Did you all have a choice? It was just
no.
Oh my god, that's kind of
We'd been boy and girl from the beginning, and then for some reason we got to our last year they decided to split us again, and for some reason thought that the girls would only appreciate Romeo and Juliet, and the boys would only appreciate Hamlet, which is quite archaic. I really would like to speak to some of my former teachers and find out why that was, but there we go. So, but what was your experience for that as you got a bit older?
Oh, I'm still like floored by that, actually.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out the logic behind that, but
I'd love to have an answer for you, but I really don't.
I'll just think about that for a while, I think. Okay, so my experience, I think I remember reading Midsummer Night's Dream and, I don't know, watching a movie or something in middle school to go along with it. But I was in drama club in high school. Like, I was already jazzed and hyped for Shakespeare by the time I got to high school. I was like, all right, let's do a lot of Shakespeare. And we only did, in drama club, and this is extracurricular, so we did a classical play every fall, and the teacher alternated it with Shakespeare this year, something else the next year, like Oscar Wilde or Moliere or something. And I was like, oh, can't we just do Shakespeare all the time? Which is
more Shakespeare.
Which said no one ever but me. as far as the actual curriculum that we had in high school, yeah, we read Romeo and Juliet in freshman year in first year. So, but that was everybody, boys
Yeah.
and girls.
Lucky you.
And let's see, in senior year, I think that you could either take, you didn't have to take English your senior year. You could enroll in advanced placement English if you wanted to read Shakespeare, which covered Hamlet, or you could take an elective credit, which was like a whole semester of Shakespeare. And of course, I did that.
Yeah, definitely. Easy choice.
Yeah. And we read, I don't know, we read a bunch of them. We read Macbeth and Hamlet and I can't remember all the other. I think I had already read all of them by the time I got there, actually. And I was like, maybe I should have done the advanced placement thing and just done Hamlet really in depth. But what I really loved about Shakespeare Lit is that we watched a lot of movies, which is, I think, really important for people understanding Shakespeare. I know a lot of people who talk to me about wanting to get into Shakespeare, they ask me, what play do I start reading? I'm like, no, don't start reading something, start watching something. Like, first go to the theater. But if you can't do that, then here's some great adaptations for the screen that you should watch. But we could get to that later.
Yeah, we will, definitely.
Yeah, and then in between junior and senior year of high school, I also did a 2-week internship down at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is kind of like my Stratford-on-Avon, my Globe Theater.
Yeah.
to you guys. I mean, it's not the historic significance, of course, but it's, I would say, the premier Shakespeare festival in the U.S. It's
wow.
Yeah, they're amazing down there.
Oh, cool experience. Oh, brilliant. I think you've kind of shown us this already, but I will still ask, even if you hadn't, it's too difficult to just put into mere words, but can you just tell us a little bit about exactly what it is about Shakespeare's works that you fell in love with, or what mainly keeps you coming back? Because obviously, like you say, you read them so early on, but you're still now, years later, coming back and analysing. So what is it that keeps bringing you back?
Yeah, it's hard to say because Shakespeare's been there for such a long time, and I guess part of it is just seeing him pop up in all these places, and when I'm not even expecting him to, a line or a character, and I'm like, oh, hey, here's Shakespeare, whether this author knows it or not. It could be part of their literary subconscious. I mean, sometimes you can tell, yeah, okay, this is intentional. And even George R.R. Martin has said that he loves Shakespeare and
of course
has intentionally drawn some parallels between War of the Roses and Song of Ice and Fire. And I think he's also explicitly mentioned Tyrion and Richard III. But I don't. There's like this whole literary subconscious that we all have that traces directly back to Shakespeare. And even if I start writing a story, I could I won't even know it sometimes. I'm like, oh, maybe I should differentiate this a little bit from Macbeth or something, because or work with the themes here, because I can see some of this structure or this thematic similarity coming out, but don't want to telegraph it necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I write stories and they all come out like Shakespeare, because I'm not deep into it, but I think that there's something to be said for working with that part of your head that is your creative mind, that is informed by this great figure in the Western literary canon who has influenced so much. I don't know. That's a really big question.
It's a tough question. Yeah, that would take us a while. I was a bit mean there. And you mentioned there, you write your own fiction stuff now?
Yeah, I try to. I don't publish anything yet. It's a lot of starting stories and not finishing them. I need to finish them.
I've been there, don't worry.
Yeah.
That's part of it. That's all part of it. We all have to do that. But yeah, that's cool. I hope we do get to read some of your stuff soon. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. That's the next step. I feel like
Absolutely.
A lot of this analysis is kind of preparing me for maybe writing my own stuff. So that would be great.
Oh, we hope so. Do let us know. We'll be right there. Back to your website and the About Me section. So your favourite characters, your Shakespeare characters, I mean, they're listed as Falstaff and Cleopatra. Now, thankfully, I can say I didn't have to Google Cleopatra. That would be quite bad. But shamefully, I did have to double check Falstaff because I knew the name and I knew he was the guy that's in multiple, and I might have been able to guess he's in. I want to say he's in Mary Wives of Windsor.
Yes, he is.
But I would have been confident to put money on it. So give us the top trumps cards. Just tell us about these two characters and why you picked those two out of all the hundreds of characters you could pick, and perhaps who they reflect in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. Yeah, these two characters are just larger than life. If they have anything in common, it's that, they're magnetic in their charisma, both of them. Cleopatra, she's just this unapologetic bad bitch who rules Egypt, but she's also extremely vulnerable when she's in love. And I think she also has a lot of insecurity, which is revealed at the end of Antony and Cleopatra. It's called Antony and Cleopatra, but to me it's more about Cleopatra. It could just be called Cleopatra. And Falstaff is great. He's like this drunk fat peasant who's supposed to provide like a counterpoint to the prince he hangs out with, who's kind of the star of the play, and Henry IV when Falstaff appears. And yet Falstaff becomes this character capable of a lot more emotional depth than Hal himself. And he's quite philosophical at times too. And what's really great is that Queen Elizabeth saw this character Falstaff and she loved him so much that she told Shakespeare to write a play about him in love. And that ended up being Merry Wives of Windsor. So it's kind of like the first fanfic that we have in literature.
Yeah, that's weird to think. Yeah.
I just love thinking about Queen Elizabeth. What a cool lady to Falstaff to do that with Falstaff, because you can just imagine her watching this dull history play, which, okay, I don't want to put words into her mouth or anybody's mouth. Henry IV is a really cool play, but you can imagine her watching this history play and being like, oh God, and then she sees Falstaff and she's like, yes, that, more of that. And then that ends up being Shakespeare's new central character in a play. But as for characters they represent in A Song of Ice and Fire, I would say Cleopatra, you can see traces of Cleopatra in Daenerys a lot, especially in how people see her. Like she's just this sort of goddess-like character. He's all golden and beautiful and perfect, but when you get beneath the surface a little bit, and she's very powerful, but when you get beneath the surface, you see like all these bubbling conflicts and insecurities, and that makes her very similar to Daenerys to me. She also has a lot of Cersei in her. She's very possessive of her lover, like Cersei is of Jaime.
Yeah.
And Falstaff is, I would say in demeanor, he is a lot like Robert Baratheon, the late Robert Baratheon. I mean, they're both portly and often drunk and like a good roll in the hay. And I don't know. I don't think, Robert has his moments where he says some pretty poignant things, and, especially on his deathbed to Ned. And you're like, oh God, this really is the end. And, like how Falstaff has his philosophical moments. I think that there is a huge depth to Robert Baratheon as well, even though he might not be the best of kings, the best of people.
Yeah, let's give him credit. He does have it. They are in there. These moments are sprinkled in. Yeah, I like that Daenerys comparison, especially like you said about the vulnerability and the change between public image and personal and how different it can be. That's a great comparison. So yeah, obviously you have continued with your love of Shakespeare into adulthood because you're still analysing. You have your website, but are you involved in any other way? Are you still involved in any of the productions or anything like that?
No, I've wanted to. In fact, I signed up to audition for Othello a few weeks ago, but it was a production that was far away from me, and then I got my job and I realized that's going to be really hard to do rehearsals, and I don't want to stress myself out. So I am going to keep looking, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely do.
Yeah, because it's something I really want to get back into. Actually, I haven't acted or been in a Shakespeare play since I was 19, and that's 15 years now. So I'd really like to get back into it.
Oh, yeah, we definitely hope you do. That would be cool.
Yeah, I'll tell Twitter about it when I do.
Yeah, we'll be waiting. So we'll leave Shakespeare behind just for a little bit, and maybe you can tell us what your other interests were back in your teen years and your youth, and were you, apart from Shakespeare, were you a big reader or maybe more of a movie watcher? What were you into?
Oh, definitely both. I've always loved books and movies, especially stories that had an edginess or darkness to them. Like when I was a really young kid, I was obsessed with The Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz, which is incredibly dark. And I love The Neverending Story because it scared me to death. The wolf scared me so much. And then I got like really into serious dramas at an early age, which is kind of weird. I got really obsessed with Amadeus. I don't know if you've seen Amadeus. It's about,
I have.
Yeah, I got obsessed with that movie when I was 6, and I was like kind of my big introduction to music, actually.
Yeah.
So it was kind of funny because I had like all these fantasy stories that I was into, and then got into these big serious adult dramas. But yeah, and my favorite book as a kid is this book that everybody in my school read because it was in the library and everybody loved it. But I found that not many other people have read it. It's called Amy's Eyes. And it's about this girl in an orphanage with a puppet who comes to life and takes her sailing around the world with all these other puppets who come to life. It's definitely in that fantasy vein. It's a really
sold me.
cool story.
I'm going to find it now.
Yeah, it's really good. And of course, I was a teenager when Harry Potter started being written, or maybe a kid, preteen. And that was really cool just to be living in that era as a teen when Harry Potter was still coming out, and I loved Harry Potter.
Yeah, we're lucky.
And,
we're very lucky.
I love a lot of other classic literature. I read a lot of classic literature in high school. I ate my greens and my peas and asked for more. And especially Thomas Hardy. Aside from Shakespeare, I really love Thomas Hardy. He wrote Far from the Madding Crowd, Return of the Native, Jude the Obscure, all those.
That's great. Excellent. Fine. Brilliant. And so speaking of TV, I've been seeing on your tweets recently that you've just started Breaking Bad. How are you finding it? Still sticking with?
Oh, yes, I love it. It's great.
Yeah?
Yeah, I especially love season 2. I think I'm on season 5 now, and it's getting really good again. I felt like season 3 and season 4 there were some lulls, but great moments, obviously.
You've done better than me. I've not got past episode 3, season 1. I've tried 3 times. It's not happened
really?
For me. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah.
Just don't seem to pick it back up. But I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Not everything is for everybody, though. So, and that's fine.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed the first 3 episodes. Just one of those ones that I don't seem to find my way back to. But maybe one day, I'm sure.
There's so much
one
to
day
watch.
I'll run out of programs.
So much.
One day they'll dry out.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move slightly back towards A Song of Ice and Fire.
We've just been talking about Shakespeare and me this entire time.
Well, that is the point in the podcast. We're not doing too badly, but we'll try and involve George a little bit. He gets left out otherwise. I think I'm right in saying you were a show watcher first. Is that right? Yes, I was. When did you and the show first cross paths? Was that early on in the show's existence, or were you a latecomer like myself? Oh, you were a latecomer too. That's good. Yeah, I was 2014, I guess. Yeah, season 4. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was later than you, actually.
All right.
Yeah, I was really late. I tried getting into it around season 2, season 3, because friends told me about it, and I was like, oh, I'm going to read the books first, because obviously
always a good idea.
I want to be a smug book reader who read the books first. But I don't know, I couldn't get into it for whatever reason. I was listening to them on audiobooks, and I love Roy Dotrice and everything, but I had like a short commute, and it was just too difficult to get into this huge, dense fantasy political book series. Yeah. And then I tried watching the show. I wasn't really into all the sex position stuff. I was like, this is not for me. Didn't get past the first 2 episodes and just didn't really think about it or maybe I watched 3 episodes because I didn't think about it until season 6 was on, and I was accidentally watching the Hodor episode with some friends. And I was like, oh, I remember Hodor, and I'll just watch
He does
this.
stick out, yeah.
But it was the Hold the Door episode, and I was like, holy
Wow.
crap. And I just kept thinking about it, and I was hearing people talk about it on the radio, and people talk about it at work, and just losing their minds over it. And I thought, you know, maybe I really should give this another chance. And so I did in the middle of season 6, and came to the fandom shortly thereafter. So yeah,
what an episode to get involved in.
Yeah. Right.
Straight in the deep emotions.
Right. And then read the books pretty much. I binged the series like twice and then read the books, and still on my my first reread, I guess you would say. But
yeah.
Definitely have not been around as long as others have.
Well, some people are pretty hard to beat. They've been around decades, but never mind, we keep going. So, and you said earlier about you're really passionate about the screen adaptations of Shakespeare, and I think we're probably right in saying nothing has been adapted to screen as much as his work. So maybe can you just speak about the job you think HBO and the D&D did overall with the Song of Ice and Fire as an adaptation?
Yeah, you know, again, I think maybe it's different coming to it as a show watcher first and somebody who binged a good part of the series, you know, like 3/4 of it. But I unabashedly love Game of Thrones, even after reading the books. It's just, I love it, you know. And a lot of these things that are problems for other people, they're kind of minor problems for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe that's also because of being a theater person, and I'm so into the visuals and the acting and thinking about just the craft of that visual medium. That I'm not as worried about nits and dialogue and character arcs, even though, you know, it just like takes me honestly, I have to think hard about it to find error in it. Like, it's usually when and that probably sounds horrible to most people, but like I can't critically think or something, but I'm just like so into it as I'm watching it. And then when I see somebody say something about the script, or, you know, character that's ruined or whatever, I look at what they say and I'm like, oh, you know, I can see that from your point of view, but it's just not that big of a deal for me. And I even loved season 8. Like, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. You know, I think that Jaime and Tyrion could have been written better this last season. I would say, like, that's my biggest nit, is the Lannister boys. I actually thought that Daenerys got plenty of attention. And her arc was really good to me in season 8. I was more fond of her in season 8 than any other season. But even with my criticism about Tyrion and Jaime sometimes not having a really fluid character arc in the final season, it still wasn't that big of a deal for me. Like, I still loved it, you know. So yeah I don't know, I'm just like, I'm kind of exhausted with the discourse, but it's still really happy that I had a good experience with the show.
I found a kindred spirit. I mean, exactly the same way. I think many are that, you know, I can see problem, like Tyrion is a good example. I'm well aware that his character was underwritten for nearly half the show, but it doesn't matter to me. I still loved season 8, exactly like you said. I don't know of anything more edge of my seat that I've ever watched, and even I could see problems then, and as I've gone on for the last, whatever it is, 2 months now, I can see more, but like you say, it just doesn't block my enjoyment as much as other people's.
Yeah.
Although I
good
certainly see their points. Yeah, it is sorely missed, I'm sure. Are you looking forward to the prequel shows?
The prequel shows?
Yeah. Are you looking forward to them?
You know, I'm interested to see what they do. It's not going to be quite the same without the characters we know and love, of course, but it will be interesting to see what they come up with in this same world with storylines that are adjacent to the ones that we've been experiencing all these years. So
yeah,
I'm definitely interested. I wouldn't say super hyped and excited yet, but we'll see what happens.
It'll come. I think you make a good point there as well about the, you know, being able to appreciate the acting, because that's not like I've never done drama or anything like that, so I have a difficult time knowing I never know if anyone's acting well or not, but I think in season 8 I actually did think like, oh, I know they're going all out, whoever it is, whether it's Kit Harington or whoever, whatever.
Emilia Clarke.
All of them basically, to be honest with you. Emilia Clarke I loved to pieces, and they all did so well, and I think that really came through in season 8 more than any other series, even to dunderheads like me who don't know what they're talking about. So for people like you who actually do know about acting and what is good acting, I'm sure
God,
it was exploding off the screen.
I mean, the thing is that I was rehearsing this audition piece that I was going to do for Othello a few weeks back, and I was like, God, acting is really hard. I mean, I haven't done it in years, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just not going to commit this much to it, because it was taking a lot of my time trying to prepare for it. And
I bet.
Even since then, just that little bit of preparation, I thought acting is it's truly an art. Not anybody can do it. And what they did on Game of Thrones, yeah.
Nothing I've seen before or shall see again, but we await the prequel show anyway, with crossed fingers.
Just they've got a great cast coming up for it, so they're putting a lot of energy and money into it. So fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is about our midway point, so we'll have our little section. We've got some extra special sections for you. Everyone's favourite is Podrick's People, where I invite our guests to give a shout out or highlight someone within the fandom that they're particularly fond of, or who's done something that's caught their eye in the past however long. So Lauren, would you like to highlight anyone particular?
Oh yes, that would have to be my BFF in the fandom, Maester Mary. That's Merry. If you're looking for her on Twitter, it's at Maester Mary. And she's just great. We got to know each other a lot better over the past couple years, and she's just really smart, and she has great insight into a lot of the characters, especially John, who I think is her favorite. And she has a great essay out about John and his arc in A Dance with Dragons. And what I really like about that essay is she has like this sort of book club discussion format where she ends each section with a series of questions that we're supposed to think about. And I think that's really cool, because I do think it's all about the questions and not about the answers in A Song of Ice and Fire. So there are a lot of reasons to be impressed with Maester Mary and to love her. She's also just a really cool person to talk to and really kind. But definitely check out that essay of hers.
Yeah, it's a great read. I'm actually very jealous of the format of her essay that you mentioned, because I thought that was a really cool way of doing it. So yeah, definitely check that out. I'm sure most have already, but if you haven't, make sure you do. Moving on, we like to ask our guests about their favourite characters. You've already given us a bit of a hint about your favourite character, and you list on your site your 5 top POVs as Brienne and Catelyn and Theon, Davos and Sansa.
Yeah, they're always changing, but those are a good.
I'm sure.
Oh yeah. When I was reading the outline, I was like, did I? Yeah, I think those are my top 5 still. I think they are.
It's ever changing. There's too many to pick from. But perhaps you can give us a sentence on each of these. Is it 5? It's 5, isn't it? Yeah. And why those particular ones stand out to you. So let's kick it off with Brienne.
Yeah, this could be like an entire podcast in itself, so I'll try to keep it short. Okay, so a sentence for each. Yeah, Brienne, I see a lot of myself in her. So I guess that's why I gravitate towards her as my favorite character, because she's just kind of like how I locate myself in the story. But what really stands out about me about her, never mind, I've been talking too long, is that she's got this quest arc where she's seeking a life of honor and duty, but beneath all of that, I think that it's really love that she's looking for, and that just that it just makes my heart burst for her, you know. I just want to give her a big hug. And Catelyn, I love her self-awareness, even as her world comes crashing down around her. Like, she's tried to play by the rules, play by the feudal playbook, and it's still not working, but she has like the self-awareness of what to do despite that. She's just so strong. And Davos, like, yeah, I love it. He is our window into Stannis' world, and that's all very interesting and everything. But even by himself, he's this character who, like, we meet him after his redemption, you know, after he's had his fingers taken, and he's this smuggler in his past, and he's moved past that, and so he's like the sort of post-redemption arc guy, but then he continues to have these struggles, and even has like this kind of rebirth in Blackwater Bay, and even after that, you know, there's still all this conflict that he's struggling with, and I find that really interesting about him. And Theon, I mean, come on, he's a character that we all wanted the worst for, and then he got it, and I don't know about you, but I feel terrible about wanting the worst for him. So, I mean, it's not just me feeling terrible for Theon, but feeling terrible about how I wanted the worst for him.
It's a masterstroke by George, and the old switcheroo he pulls.
It is. And then Sansa, of course, like, she's the princess of the story, who loves stories, and they're deconstructed, and she like shares so much. There's so much meta between her and the reader as we're reading this story, and it's our expectations are subverted, but not just that, but it's like there's just this exploration of the psychology of a fantasy story and stories in general, and how every choice is informed by the past and informs the future. And yeah, I love Sansa. She's great.
They're all good choices. It's really cool to listen to your reasons there. Especially, you're right about Davos being a window. They call Areo Hotar the camera that rides, or whatever he is. But Davos he's still a camera, but he's a well-developed camera with a soul. He's so much more than just that. But I think he's one of the best uses of kind of secondary characters being giving. You know, he's not the main guy in his POV. It's all about Stannis until it does eventually become about Davos. And I just love everyone giving love to Catelyn, because she's always been one of my favourites. She's just so cool. And so it's great to have us match up. But I'm going to make it difficult for you now. I've gone from being nice, now I'm going to be nasty. I'm going to try and narrow it down a bit. So this time, instead of a sentence, I want just one word from each POV. So whatever word pops into your head first. So if I say Theon, you would say...
Reek.
Oh, it's dark. That's dark. Jeez, all right. I didn't mean that.
Well, that is the first word. If I were given a second option, I would just say scared, because I'm always scared when I get to a Theon chapter.
No, Reek is good. Okay, what about Davos?
Loyal.
Oh, I like that one. That's good. I like that one. Catelyn?
Family.
Yeah, it's brilliant. We're getting lighter as we go on. We've moved on from Brienne?
Sword.
Ooh, cool now. Great. And to finish off, Sansa?
Princess. I would say.
Princess, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Don't blame you. Okay, let's see if we can... you've got a really strong starting 5. You'd win any basketball game easily. But can we narrow it down to one champion? Maybe we can have a little mini melee to see. Maybe not, but let's see if we can get one out of the group. What do you think?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so I've got 4 extra questions here, and each time you're going to have to eliminate someone, okay? They can't come back. Once they're done, they're done. All right? So
question they can't come back.
Yeah, see, we're brutal here on the island. There's no second choices.
Okay.
So question 1, which character is the least likely to climb vines to chat to their love, as Dear Romeo does in the film adaptation?
So which of the 5 that I've listed as my favorite?
That's right.
Okay.
Which was least likely?
I was gonna say Sansa, because she does have some climbing action, like when she's getting out of King's Landing. But I don't think that she would climb to see her love. I think that would be a Brienne thing to do.
So you think Brienne would be least likely or most likely?
Oh, it says least likely.
Oh yeah, see, it's tough, isn't it?
Oh, okay, least likely. I think Catelyn would be the least likely. I think.
Oh no, Catelyn out in the first round. I didn't see it coming. Upset. Oof. All right, Catelyn's gone. So 4 remain.
Oh no.
So out of those 4, who is most likely to have a corrupt spouse be their downfall?
I'm going to say
Much like
Davos.
Mr.
I
Macbeth.
think Maria. That's his wife's name, right? Maria.
It
I think.
is, yeah.
I think that she's going to like get tired of his bullshit and come get him. Be like, you
Maybe
never
she's
call.
horrible.
You never take care of the kids. Where
Yeah.
are you?
I've always wondered if he's just trying to, like, I'd just rather go to war than deal with her. I'm not going back to her. So you might be right there. But, okay, Davos is out then.
Oh, he's out.
Nasty. Yeah, he's gone. Round 3. So who would look worse in one of those big, huge, ruffled collars that they sometimes wore of the age? I think I'm right.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I've gotten rid of Catelyn and Davos, so we're left
Yes,
with
you have...
Sansa and Brienne. I think Brienne would not rock the huge ruffled collar.
I think have you got Theon left as well?
Oh wait, I was left Theon on the left. I still
Yeah,
think
you got
Brienne would
Theon.
look worse in the huge.
Yeah, I
ruffled
think you're
collar.
probably right.
I hate to say that because she gets enough crap for her appearance, but it's not her style. Is the thing.
Unless you could get like an iron one that could be protective in some way. Maybe then, but probably not.
That would be rad.
Yeah. Okay, so the finals, Sansa versus Theon, as we all knew it would come down to. So who would be better? I think I know the answer here, but who would be better at remembering classic Shakespeare lines? Who would win a Shakespeare off?
Oh, I think that'd be Sansa. That'd definitely be Sansa.
Yeah,
She's a good girl.
Not a tough matchup. She's got the memory.
Yeah, she's smart. Especially if it was Romeo and Juliet, because all girls need to read Romeo and Juliet.
Well, if you went to my school, yeah. You had no choice. Okay, there we go. So we know officially Sansa is your favourite POV, and you can't argue about it.
All right.
Champion.
So it's not
Well done, we
Theon
crown
because I didn't choose Theon for any of...
No, we're going to have
Okay.
Sansa.
Sansa is good. I am cool with Sansa.
We changed that. We flipped that round for the last round. We went who won instead of who lost. Yeah, Sansa definitely. Okay, great. And right, let's keep going because, like you say, we could go all day. But
yeah,
we had some fan questions sent in, and we'll get to. I've got 4 written down. We'll do 2 now and 2 at the end. So first is from @JimmyMac42, and you kind of answered this already, but you can tell us again. He asks where to start with Shakespeare if you only have school experience, but are still a big A Song of Ice and Fire fan.
Yeah, I always recommend watching some badass movie adaptations of Shakespeare because that's what's going to get you into it. And it's meant to be seen. It's not meant to be read so much.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, sure, you can read Shakespeare and it's great, but it's better after seeing it. So get to the theater, see a play production. But if you don't have access to that, then I really, especially after reading A Song of Ice and Fire and watching Game of Thrones, I really recommend the Hollow Crown series on BBC.
Yes, that's a good series. Yeah, I watched
that. And I mean, they started doing that after Game of Thrones was in, I don't know, it was already in its 3rd or 4th season by then.
Yeah,
and
I think you're right.
you can definitely tell like there are some Game of Thrones overtones in that production of the Hollow Crown. Like if you start with Henry VI, you're definitely going to see a lot of a Game of Thrones in there. And it's not just because they're trying to do that, but because George lifted from Henry VI a lot of structural things. So that's interesting. I also recommend Titus with Anthony Hopkins. That's a 2000 production. That's really bloody and really good. My favorite Macbeth production is the one with Michael Fassbender in 2015.
Okay.
It also has it's got a little bit of a Game of Thrones overtone to me as well, so I recommend that for show fans. And my favorite adaptation of all time is the 1996 Romeo and Juliet. It might sound basic, the one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, but it's so good and it's so inventive too. It's like I usually don't even like modern adaptations of Shakespeare, but this one just worked. And it's probably going to be the best Romeo and Juliet you ever see. Well, I can't speak for everybody.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I love that film. That's a great film.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
I think I have an older sister, and I remember her like buying it on like video. And so I would have been like a kid when I watched it, but I do remember watching it and thinking like, oh, they talk funny, and being all interested. And I'm guessing that must have been maybe my first exposure to Shakespeare. I'm trying to think how old I would have been, because I don't know if you've read Terry Pratchett's Weird Sisters, which is like the knock on
Oh, I haven't.
Macbeth. So that's like Macbeth but Discworld style.
Oh, cool.
And I read that at the same time we were doing Macbeth at school, because then I found that version like more funny, as you do as a teenager. But I think that the DiCaprio film would have been my first exposure, and it's always stuck with me. And they still do show that to kids in English schools now, because I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
So that's a good way to get them involved.
Yeah, it is just stunning. But there are also a lot of other great adaptations out there. So recommend seeking those out. And like you said, there are so many authors who riff on Shakespeare and not just do modern adaptations of these plays, but take elements from them. Like you said, Terry Pratchett just focuses on the witches aspect of it.
Well, it's kind of like from their POV, so to speak, but
cool.
It's the whole play. There's the Macbeth character is there. I can't remember what they call him, and kind of they're all there. But it's brilliant. It might be my favourite Terry Pratchett, but that's I could do that for 3 hours. That's another podcast. I'll give you a link.
Sure.
So there you go, Jimmy. There's plenty of options for you out there. And secondly, Sir Travis, who we all know and love, he asks, what other works of literature do you believe share parallels with A Song of Ice and which might have influenced George on the way?
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one, because George is already so open about all these works of literature that have influenced him. So if I don't know, I feel like I'm not going to say anything that's really new, except for something that resonates with me personally.
No, go for it.
Yeah. So in this Shakespeare Festival, I was also in a production of the late medieval play Everyman, which is, I believe it's anonymous. Like, we don't know who wrote it, but it's about a man who is summoned by death, and his name is Everyman. And Everyman is allowed some time to find someone to go with him on his journey through death. But the only one who will go with him is good deeds, like everybody else, fellowship and kinship and material goods and everything. They're like, no, this is your journey alone. You can't go. And good deeds is like, well, I'll go with you, but you need to go to confession to make me stronger. And so he does. And so he achieves Christian salvation. And yeah, the play is about Christian salvation, but there's also like this very strong emotional, psychological undercurrent. And it's about human moral reckoning, and we definitely see that going forward in the Western literary canon, and for sure in A Song of Ice and Fire. There are all these characters, I think, who have their own journey that they're taking, and they have to achieve that kind of moral reckoning and do their good deeds, and so that they can progress further along their arc. I'm thinking like Jaime and Sandor and Theon. They all strike me as everyman type characters, and not in the typical way that we talk of an everyman, like this is everyman, but in the play Everyman, who is journeying to death. And even in Game of Thrones, when we had that one scene that everybody hated in the season 8, where Bronn comes in with the crossbow and he's confronting Jaime and Tyrion, saying, look, this is what I need my castle, and otherwise I'm gonna kill you guys. I'm gunning for you. And I don't know, that just really vividly reminded me of this play. And yeah, going forward, it's almost kind of like, and this is probably my imagination, but what is literature if not to kind of think of things like this? Like, this is the fun of literature. It was just kind of like death coming into Everyman, saying, this, get your affairs in order, pay your debts, because death is coming for you. And I mean, it didn't in the end for Tyrion, but for Jaime certainly. And I saw him going back to Cersei as a kind of a good deed, and giving her some of the the goodness that he had achieved in the north.
Okay, that's a good take on it.
Like, I don't know. I think I was upset about it at first because I saw it as a regression. Then I thought, well, I don't know. He's really giving her something. He's giving her this great gift, actually, of humanness, and she has a human end with him, and he's kind of learned how to be human again, and that's a really special thing. So
I like that. It's a great take. I've not thought about it at all. Good job there.
So
That's great.
yeah, Every Man.
Yeah.
It's this very dark play, and you're probably wondering, wow, what is this kind of a youth program you were in that you were doing all these weird
True.
plays? And it's how we roll here in Western Washington, and
Yeah.
in the rain and the darkness, I guess.
Super. Okay. Good. There you go. So Travis, question asked, question answered. So we'll leave the midway point then, and we'll get on because there's a few more questions yet to go.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah, I know. This
It's fun,
is
though.
normally my. Oh, good. I'm glad. This is normally my favourite question about. You've kind of already answered it, but when did you? So you said that you found the show first, and then you kind of binged the books. But when did you really become aware of the larger fandom and all the podcasts and all the analysis going on? And when was the first moment you thought that you could dip your toe into this as well?
Yeah, I had no idea that there was even a book fandom. Like, I had already read the books, and I had no idea there was like this huge book fandom on Twitter until I think this one week I was doing comparisons between Shakespeare characters and Game of Thrones / Song of Ice and Fire characters, and somehow Eliana found me at Arithmetric, Glass Table Girl, all her names.
Of course.
And she like started interacting with me, and we were actually talking about Daenerys and Cleopatra, and I was just like, wow, she loves Shakespeare and A Song of Ice and Fire too. That's so cool. And I wonder how many other people love the books and are talking about them in this way. And I don't know. I think that as we became friends, just other people started finding me, and it was more like people found me, and then I realized, wow, there are all these people having these conversations. And I was so impressed with the level of intellect that everyone had. It's actually quite intimidating. There are all these great ideas and great minds in the fandom. And yeah, it's definitely one of the biggest surprises, I think, that I've found on social media is the Islam
a good one.
fandom. No, it's really good because it's just great to come and talk about literature. It's just an online social media book club constantly, and I love
absolutely. Yeah, it's a paradise. So we have Eliana to thank.
Oh yes,
we'll put that at our door as well. She's got so many accolades already, but we'll add that one to the list.
Her and
Faces alumni.
Pat Spinagle too. Like, Pat was a big cheerleader of mine early on. He kept telling people about my account. He really liked some of the verse that I had written, and so I have Pat Spinagle to thank for a lot.
Good. We'll put your two champions. Excellent. So speaking of writing your own verse, which you did mention early on as well, did you start writing that at the same time you started like comparing and analysing the two series, or did that come a bit after once you were more aware of both?
I started doing that early on.
Right.
Yeah. I had actually seen some other people write Shakespearean verse. I was motivated by something I saw on Tumblr or something. Somebody had written Shakespearean verse for Sansa and the Hound, and I thought, oh, that's really cool. I want to try my hand at that. And so I did a few scenes. They're mostly based on show scenes, and I lay the verse over screenshots from the show. But yeah, I was doing that far before I found the book fandom.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've written some. It is a little bit time intensive, so I have to set aside
I bet.
a few hours for it.
Yeah, I can imagine. But we're very glad that you do find the time here and there. This, being mean again, is another too complex, stupid question, really. But maybe you can just tell us a bit about that process of writing verse and how you get your inspiration, or how you edit it, or kind of how you get from start to end, if you can. Horrible question, I know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I don't know, sometimes it's easier than at times than others, because George R. R. Martin and a lot of the scenes in the show, sometimes they are written in a very lyrical way, and you don't have to change that much, and you don't want to change everything. Like, if somebody starts off by saying, do you think, you just change it to thinkest thou. And like, those are the easy ones where you can just kind of Shakespeareanize it, just phrasing just a little bit. But then you also kind of I like to try and put some imagery and poetry into it if it's not there already.
Mm-hmm.
And that can, yeah. It's funny because when I start writing it, a lot of times I took a lot of German, and sometimes I think that writing Shakespeare in verse is a lot like writing German because like all the verbs are in different places sometimes.
Okay.
And I actually have German going through my head at times, and I mean that sounds like totally off the wall and weird, but it is like a different language. The German doesn't help at all that I have another language going through my head. But I use like a thesaurus and rhyme zone to do rhyming couplets if I'm looking at that, and I kind of count on my fingers for the iambic pentameter, and I read it aloud to make sure that it flows. And yeah, it's just like kind of a lot of rereading, and it's like fitting fitting a sheet over your bed, just kind of tightening here and pulling there until it's all nice and smooth.
That's great. Again, apologies for the different question, but it's good to get an insight to such a talent.
Writing is hard, man. It's always hard.
I figured that out over the last 3 years or so. Yeah, it is too difficult. I'll give you a slightly easier question now, at least I think so. I want to talk about Fire and Blood because, as you say, you've just talked about the actual meat and bones, the writing, the prose of it. So I'm wondering if you can still see Shakespearean parallels, even. Obviously Fire and Blood is written as a history, so it's not the narrative prose. So do you still see similarities in those general plot points from Fire and Blood?
While I was reading it through, like not a whole lot as far as tragedies, but definitely it's the War of the Roses structure. And I think that when George R.R. Martin leans on the War of the Roses for inspiration, he does lean more on the Shakespearean, like dramatized version than what actually happens in history. And you see that even with the origin story of the Greens and the Blacks. Queen Alicent wearing green and Rhaenyra wearing red and black to the open feast for the tourney. And
that's right.
In Shakespeare we also get a little bit of an origin story for the white and red roses that the Plantagenet family wears for what will ultimately become the Yorks and Lancasters, and they're just having they're like discussing a point of law outside of Parliament, and they're picking roses off of a bush to say who they side with. I mean, the difference there is that it's like this very minor point of contention that starts in Shakespeare's play and becomes this huge thing. And Fire and Blood, I think that the point of contention, the succession question is much more, it's like it starts there, and that is a huge point of contention. So that's that's a little bit different, but I don't think that George means to mirror Shakespeare. And like he doesn't mean to import I've seen people say, the Lancasters are clearly always the Lannisters, and the Yorks are clearly always the Starks, and for sure like he borrowed those names and adapted them somewhat, and that's very clever, but I don't think that they always
it's
mirror
not copy
each
and
other.
paste. And
likewise in Fire and Blood, it's not the copy and paste thing, but you definitely see like this is his big War of the Roses work for A Song of Ice and Fire, which already has a War of the Roses structure. But no, Fire and Blood.
He wants another go.
Yeah. And I love Fire and Blood, and I think what I love most about it is just how he presents it through Mushroom and the maester whose name I forget, who has his portion of the information is filtered through these different sources, and they're all unreliable. You just don't have one unreliable narrator, but all of these unreliable narrators, and it's up to the reader to decide, or is it, are all of these true? And again, it comes back to, it is all about the questions and not about the answers. And he does that so well. It's so impressive. I'm always just so impressed.
Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I was going to ask if you enjoyed it overall, because I know a few people that the more casual fan, that once they found out it was a history instead of a narrative, they said, well, that's going to be boring, not going to enjoy that. But then once they read it, it still reads like a novel. It's just presented differently. It's still the same plot beats, and you get I definitely, I know I already knew half of it, but I just got really into it.
It was great.
It's really good. It's really clever how he's managed to do that. I can't wait for the next one. Keeping on the book theme then, I'd like to ask everyone about Winds of Winter because it's always on our minds. So maybe you can just give us quickly one aspect, because there are so many to think of, but one aspect of Winds of Winter that you really just can't wait to read or find out about or see a conclusion to.
Yeah, I'm just into everything. Like, I'm excited for all of it. I think especially Lady Stoneheart and how that all falls out with Brienne and Jaime, since there's two of my favorite characters right there, Brienne and Catelyn.
Yeah, that's true.
The husk of
together.
Her former self, and I love the whole zombified Catelyn thing, and the Lady Stoneheart. It's great. I mean, this is a character we didn't get to see in Game of Thrones, so it's definitely going to be a huge surprise what happens there. And yeah, I'm also looking forward to Jon's resurrection and how that will be different in the books. How different he will be. And after the Mercy chapter and the sample chapter, I'm really excited to see what George has in store for us for Arya and Braavos. I wasn't such a fan of Arya's Braavos chapters in the past, but I really like this chapter, probably because it's the play within a play thing.
It's right up your alley, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm really excited for that. I'm not so huge on theories. I don't read a whole lot of theories. I feel like I'm almost spoiling myself if I read too many of everybody's theories. Like, I'm aware of them, but I don't like to read too in depth, because then I feel like I'm afraid that when I read The Winds of Winter for real, that I'm just going to be thinking about all of these theories, and I don't really want to do that. Yeah, but I'm just really excited to see how George's writing matures as well in this book that he's been working so long on.
Yeah,
and
good point.
How I don't know, like, I'm sure it'll be great, and in what I'm sure it'll be much the same as what we've had in the past, but it's just interesting to think there's been this whole cultural phenomenon in between A Dance with Dragons and The Winds of Winter. There's been Game of Thrones, and to think that he's been writing The Winds of Winter through all of that, and wow, what a massive upheaval that must have been in his life. And it'll just be such a triumph when he finishes it and for us to read it, and I'll be so excited.
You make a great point though. I don't think I've ever actually seen that brought up anywhere, that his writing undoubtedly will have grown or changed in some way, because it has been whatever it is, 9-8 years, whatever. So, and like you say, with this big TV show in the middle, which whether he likes it or not will have an influence. So that's really interesting.
I mean, I'm wondering if he's even going to drop any Easter eggs or like name characters after actors or something, because he named characters after Muppets in Fire and Blood. It just seems like he would acknowledge, he would give a nod to.
It's not thought about that. I really hope we do now. Yeah. Now I'm going to be disappointed if we don't. Now you've built it up too much. I'm going to blame you.
If we don't have a minor character named Kit or something.
Yeah, there's got to be a Kit. A Dink and a Lidge, maybe. Right, I've got two questions for you on Winds of Winter, just two small ones, which are kind of reflections of each other. Firstly, can you give us one thing that you think will happen, but you really, really don't want it to? You don't want to read about it?
I'm up for everything. I really like reading. Blood will have blood. I'm into all of it. But it's the emotional stuff that really gets me. Especially after watching season 8, and seeing how Jaime leaves Brienne and returns to Cersei. I don't know if that's a Winds of Winter thing, or if that'll be a Dream of Spring thing, or if that'll be totally different. Who knows, But I'm very anxious about that, because I don't want Brienne to be hurt. She is my sweet daughter, and I do not want her to be hurt. So I think that's really the only thing that I'm anxious about. But I am heartened that at least, if we're using the show as a map in any way for the books, and end states for characters, I'm heartened that she survives in the show.
Oh yeah,
so I have like a little bit
ending.
less anxiety. I know. I have less anxiety about her arc in the books now, so I'm feeling pretty good.
Okay, let me flip that on its head then. Give me something you don't think will happen, but you really, really do want it to. What's one thing you could slip in the book if you could?
Let's see. Now that's a hard one. I really want Cersei to be a big, bad, evil bitch in the Winds of Winter. I know a lot of people are saying, it's going to be different in the books. This was different in the show because Lena Headey is amazing, and Cersei is kind of this amalgamation of all these other evil characters they didn't have time for in the show, like Euron, even though we got our own special version of Euron in the show. Special, yeah, good word, special. But I kind of really want Cersei to be really evil and destructive in the books, and I think there's even foreshadowing for that a little bit, even in the last chapter, in Kevin's chapter, when she's noticing how even Cersei seems to be a little bit docile after her shaming, and she's smiling, and haven't seen her smile in a while. Like, that just reads eerie to me. Like,
it does, yeah, creepy. Yeah. What is she thinking?
Yeah.
It's like we're gonna pounce, yeah.
Yeah, so I really want to see the evil reign, the rise of Cersei, and I know a lot of people think that House Lannister is just going to kind of have its autumn in the Winds of Winter, but I want there to be a little bit of a struggle there.
Not without a fight, surely. We're racing towards the final section. Before we get there, I'd love to know if you've got any future projects coming up, or, I mean, we would be lucky just to keep having the same excellence you're bringing to Twitter and your website, but if there is anything you want to let us know about.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be at Con of Thrones in a few days, and have a lot of great panels lined up. I'm talking about Honor in Westeros, and Northern Justice, and Guest Right. We're talking about one panel I'm particularly looking forward to is Shakespearean villains in A Song of Ice and Fire, where we're going to talk about villainy in Shakespeare and in A Song of Ice and Fire. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And another panel I'm looking forward to is The Stolen Child in A Song of Ice and Fire. So we're going to be talking about the motif of children who are stolen away, children who are kind of like changelings, and also like ruined childhoods in A Song of Ice and Fire, because I think it's just really resonant throughout the series and for its genre as a fantasy genre as a whole. So I'm really excited about that panel.
Yeah, I bet.
And yeah, I'm going to get recordings out there on my YouTube channel after that, so that everybody can enjoy them, not just people who go to Con of Thrones.
Yeah, us Brits, we can enjoy them too.
Yeah, it's quite a long ways for you to come all the way to Nashville.
Just a tiny bit, yeah. One day. I'm not jealous at all.
One day.
I'm not green.
So that's in the immediate works. I'm in the process of updating my website so that it's kind of a resource for essays on Shakespeare and A Song of Ice and Fire, because I've gotten a lot of followers in the past few months, and I think some people seem to think I'm like this authority on Shakespeare, which I never really wanted to be. I just kind of wanted to mess around and have fun, and I want to use my celebrity now. It's not really celebrity, it's just 5,000 followers, but I want to use my followership to promote other people's work and what they've like. There have been people who have written about Tyrion as Richard III and Wars of the Roses and all kinds of things that I don't even really want to write about, because other people have done it better, and so I'm going to fix up my website to make it more of a resource for those essays, so people can find them easily. Eliana, of course, wrote an amazing essay on Daenerys as a Shakespearean tragic hero. I'm going to include that. But as far as anything beyond, I have not really thought about it, so we'll just have to wait and see.
We look forward to finding out, and we definitely look forward to this change to the website. Make sure it keeps feeling fun for you. That's the way to keep going. Keep it passionate. Of course. Okay, we're going to head to the final section then, which we like to call In Front of the Faces. We've got a few final questions for you. And before we get to that, before we say goodbye, they're the second part of these fan questions, and they kind of overlap, but I'll do them differently. So our good friend Joe Magician, he asks, what books couldn't you finish? You ever struggled to finish books at all?
Usually I am someone who makes myself finish a book, even if I don't like it. And that's probably not a really good habit because it'll often take me months to finish a 200-page book, even if I don't. I could be reading something else. But
We're the same boat again. I'm the same way.
yeah, I never finished the Bible. I started reading.
Fair.
Yeah, it's a hard book to read from front to cover.
Yeah, sure.
And this is going to be controversial, but the other book I have never finished is Lord of the Rings, which I feel terrible about because it's just like this standard of literature for our fandom. It's influenced George so much. I have read The Hobbit. I read that in school. I loved it, but I don't know.
You know what? We're gonna have to double up again. Same way. Exactly. I'm looking. It's over there somewhere. The big all-in-one, and it's my wife's favorite thing in the world. So I was trying to read. I got to the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, and that took months.
Oh, really? You too? Okay.
Slogging through, and I just thought, well, maybe when there's battles and stuff. No.
Yeah, I got to
put it down and not pick it up again.
Tom Bombadil and kind of said goodbye, but I love the movies.
Hobbit,
I love the movies, and what doesn't help is that I want to finish the books, but then every now and then there's some tweet that gets thousands of retweets on Twitter, which is like, the Lord of the Rings movies are actually better than the books, and then people go wild and agree, and I'm like, well, what's the point?
I can see, we talk about adaptations, and we're going to talk about good adaptations. It seems to be, as far as I've found, the best one I've ever found for book to screen.
Oh, for sure.
Can't really,
But lots of respect for Lord of the Rings. Tons.
Yeah. I put Two Towers on last night for no reason at all. I don't know why. Just wanted to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, The Hobbit. I actually had the Hobbit graphic novel I found in my library once, and I was 11, and that was cool.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah.
Any others, or is it?
Those are the only two. Honestly, those are the only two I can think of.
No, I'm much the same. I really struggle. Brave New World I just read. I didn't, and that's like thin, not long, but that wasn't that bad.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean though. It's not a huge character book. It's more dystopian.
Well, and it's just old timey prose as well. But no, we push through. So similar. You mentioned him earlier, Patman23, of course, Pat.
Yay.
He asks, and this is an important question, probably the most important question of the night. He asks, will you eventually read The Wise Man's Fear, or the sequel to Name of the Wind, of course? Important question. Pretty much the whole podcast rests on this.
Maybe I've read Name of the Wind, and I don't know. I think that there are some people, and I'm one of them, who don't quite connect to Quoth, however you pronounce it.
Whatever you call him.
Yeah, and I just didn't, he was an annoying little shit, and I understand that's the point, but it just made it really difficult for me to enjoy the book. But I really look forward to the screen adaptation.
They're all coming.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens with that, especially with the genius of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who the brain behind
cool.
Hamilton. I'm sure he's going to do wonderful things with it. And who knows, maybe it'll appeal to me in that form, and then I'll just have to read The Wise Man's Fear. So
yeah, maybe it'll do a Game of Thrones on you and push you back.
Maybe it will.
I hope it does, because I love those books. I only just read them this past year, and I finished Name of the Wind. I think I've said this probably before, and I'm boring everyone, but I finished it at 3:00 in the afternoon on New Year's Eve, and I sprinted to town because I had to get The Wise Man's Fear before the shops shut for Christmas, and I did get there, thank God.
Wow.
But it's such a different book in the way that uses I really hate first person and everything like that, and the way just it's constructed, it really turned me around. And I thought I'd kind of gone past the age of finding completely different ways to write books and being that impressed by them, but apparently not.
That's really interesting that you say that you're not into first person. I don't even have a preference for either first person
I really
or
struggle
third
with
person.
it.
That's interesting.
It's only kind of this and Hunger Games, actually. I never minded it in either, although that's kind of different because it's like present tense, but still. But okay, I'll tell you what, I'll settle for you not reading Wise Man's Fear if I can get you on Weird Sisters from Terry Pratchett. That's more than a win.
Okay.
Although
I'll read it.
I do. You might have seen me keep looking to my right over here because I've got my bookshelf with every Terry Pratchett, and I cannot see Weird Sisters. And I'm being honest, I'm getting rather worried about where it is, because it's my favourite one. I can't see it. It's bright green. I should be able to see it. I'm gonna have to check really quickly after
Maybe I
stop
stole
recording.
it over the course of this podcast.
Yeah, if you did, that's fine. As long as someone's reading it. But it's my prized possession. I'm gonna go and see it. But before that, some last questions. I'll cut a few out here because we've kind of got to them through the podcast anyway. But this is always a cool one to ask. What's your favourite non-major house? We don't want Starks or Lannisters, but your smaller house. What's the ones you're interested in?
Oh gosh, yeah. This is really a hard one. I mean, I always have more questions about House Tarth. Like they don't even have. Because, she's my girl, Bran's my girl. And she doesn't even have her own house words. So I'm always interested about that. I have to say, there's that one house, and I always forget their name. So maybe that shouldn't be my favorite house. But their house words always make me laugh. It's the one in the Iron Islands. It's though all do despise us. It's House
Cod?
I was going to say it's House Cod. Like that.
Yeah, they all do despise us, I think.
Though all do despise us. That is hilarious. That wins for house words.
Yeah, that's true. They are big.
Yeah. I have to say I haven't done a whole lot of thought about favorite minor house. So we'll have to shelve that one for now. But those are my favorite house words.
Next time. Good choice. Okay, and this is kind of, I'm sure someone's probably asked you this on Twitter before, but if you could see a Shakespeare character in Westeros and in Game of Thrones, who do you think would do well? Who think would survive long?
Oh, who would survive a while?
Yeah, who could play the game, do you think?
Oh, well, Richard III is an easy answer because, I mean, I don't know. He's already mirrored a little bit in Tyrion, but I think he's even worse than Tyrion is. I don't think that Tyrion is going to achieve that level of villainy. But let's see. Yeah, I just think of characters who already have kind of likenesses. Sure you've already flagged like them. Iago, who is kind of a Littlefinger analog. He would do pretty well. Let's see here. I'm just like going through like all the main tragedies and thinking about them. I think that I think that a good lot of them would do pretty well in Westeros. Like a lot of the villains in the tragedies, Edmund and King Lear and Iago and Othello and Macbeth. I mean, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are kind of like they're protagonists as well as villains. They're more like villainous protagonists. I'm not sure that they would do so well. I think Macduff would do amazing in Westeros. Cool. Let's go with Macduff because he's kind of the guy who saves the day. And what I really like about Macduff is, unlike Macbeth, he's aware that you need to be in touch with your heart. You need to have a balance of like your heart and your mind in order to have success and survive in this world. And I think that he would really do well in Westeros because of that, because a lot of people have a huge struggle finding that balance.
So that's a great answer. We love it. Great. Okay, we'll write that in. Chisel it in. Macduff is the answer. You would do best in Westeros. Lauren, that's my final question. I need to thank you. I've had an absolutely brilliant time just sitting and listening to you talk about Shakespeare and about Song of Ice and Fire. There's no question of why you have so many fans and why so many people do paint you as this authority. I could easily just sit and listen to your intellect and passion for all this. It's just flying through my headphones and off the screen here. It's an absolute delight and pleasure. We hope to have you back again soon. I'm really grateful for you giving up your morning to talk to me.
Thank you so much. It's been great being here. Thank you for inviting me on, and I hope I didn't ramble too much.
No, not enough.
Okay,
we want more.
Good.
Yeah, well, hopefully, I'm sure we can get you back at some point.
I would love to.
Something else, that would be great. Can you please remind everyone, I'm sure they know, but remind everyone where to find you before we head off?
Yes, you can find me at Shakesofthrones on Twitter, and you can also find me, you can find my blog at Shakespeare-themed.com, and I'm also Shakespeare-themed on YouTube.
Super, fantastic. Again, thank you. A really great time, great to talk to. great takes. I don't think I've ever had so many new takes on A Song of Ice and Fire in such a short span of time.
Oh, great.
I thought I'd found them all, but apparently not. You've really given me stuff to think about. I might have to get some essays out myself now. That's great. Thank you for visiting the Isle, and we'll see you again soon.
Okay, great. Thanks. See ya.
Oh, so there we have it. Lauren, Shakesofthrones, fantastic episode. I'm sure all of you enjoyed that as much as I did. I honestly could have just kept going and listening to Lauren talk. It's very, very clear how brilliant she is at all this stuff, and we definitely look forward to anything she's putting up for us in the future, on the website, on stage, hopefully, whatever we get. So there we go. That's guest number 5 in the books. We've had Davos Fingers, Jinx of the Air, Vanessa Cole, the girls of Girls Gone Canon, and now Lauren, Shakesofthrones, joins the hallowed halls of Isle of Faces guests, and we really do hope that we can get her back soon. It's been a long time since I've recorded one of these. Not too long since we put one out. Hopefully, won't be too long until the next one either. In the meantime, you have Valor Aridis every week, just about. You have Patreon-only episodes coming, more Lady Buckley coming back, and yes, like we say, more guest episodes. Thank you again for listening, all your continued support. So much appreciated. I hope you also, I'm sure you're already checking out all of Lauren's stuff, but give her some love also if you haven't, on Twitter, on website, wherever. Just appreciate we got people like this in the fandom, because we are lucky souls indeed. Thank you everybody. This is Sir Buckley saying goodbye. If you do want to check out our Patreon, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, very much appreciated. If not, no worries fella, you're still right by me. Have fun everybody, see you soon.